Hi everyone, Soma Gaming Vids here with a new video for you guys. Today we're going to be doing an overclocking guide for the RTX 2070. Now one thing that you guys should know is that not all RTX 2070s are the same. When Nvidia first released this GPU, there were two versions of this GPU. There was a standard, and then there was an overclocked and higher bin GPU that was sold to add-in board partners or AIBs. So the standard RTX 2070 has a base clock of 1410 MHz, a boost of 1620 MHz, a power draw of about 175 watts, requires a 550 watt power supply, versus one of the bin chips, which will run at the same base, 1410 MHz, but has a much higher boost frequency at 1830 MHz, and will also require more power at around 225 watts. Surprisingly, they only need a 550 watt power supply, which I can validate in my testing. That does seem like it's enough. And in games, I noticed that just the standard overclock out of the box, it was boosting even higher to 1965 megahertz. So out of the box, this card is amazing for what they built it for. And this guide is kind of more so for the enthusiasts to see how much further can we push this card. At what point will it really reach its limit? And in general, these steps can be followed by you if you want to basically overclock your RTX 2070 or any graphics card, really, because the steps are pretty general. Now, to do a manual overclock, you're going to need to download one of two pieces of software. So you either are going to need to download MSI Afterburner or EVGA's Precision X1 software. For the rest of this tutorial, I'll be using MSI Afterburner for personal preferences. I've used it in the past, I've had really good results with it, and I really like the interface. It's clean, it's simple, and it just gets the job done. The way you basically start an overclock is you want to start by increasing the power limit and the temperature limit. This will basically allow your graphics card to just have a little bit more headroom when it comes to power, and then as well as temperature, so it's not thermal throttling. The next thing you want to do is you want to set your core clock with a 25 megahertz offset, increasing that core clock by about 25 megahertz. Then run your favorite benchmark or game and see if there's any artifacting. Artifacting can appear to be strange things that appear on the screen, such as dots, weird discolorations of characters or images, and in general you might even see your system hang or stutter. Everything's okay. Usually you'll be able to Control-Alt-Delete the application, or you might have to restart your computer, but that's kind of how you know you've reached your limit on the core clock. You'll do a similar process for the memory clock, increasing in increments of 100 megahertz and just looking for artifacting. In general, the core clock overclock is more important than the memory overclock, but the memory overclock is definitely something that you should also investigate to get your maximum OC for your card. Now, something that's really cool that's included with the latest versions of the two pieces of software I mentioned on the last slide was MSI Afterburner and EVGA Precision X1 have auto overclocking modes. So if you're a little concerned about doing a manual overclock, you could just let the OC scanner do the work for you, and you should get a pretty stable as well as quick overclock for your graphics card. So I would definitely suggest that you increase the power and temperature limit. You don't want to really touch the core voltage. That's kind of more for advanced, I guess, users. That will just let the card draw more voltage. However, you kind of want to see how far you could push it on the standard voltage, and then if needed, let's say you are running into some stability issues, you can increase the voltage a little bit. But for my guide, I'm just going to keep the core voltage. I'm not actually going to even mess with that. Because you technically can damage your card if it's basically getting a lot more voltage. You could reduce the lifespan. I believe that Nvidia, at least throughout MSI Afterburner, is not going to let you apply too much additional voltage, but just to be on the safe side, we're not going to mess with that. Now, in order to use the OC scanner mode, you're going to click on the OC scanner button at the top, and then you're going to hit scan. It's going to take about 15 to 20 minutes. It's going to find basically the maximum frequencies that kind of work with your GPU, and then you're going to click on test to make sure that the card is stable at those frequencies. Finally, you want to make sure you hit the check mark to apply your overclock, and then hit the icon that looks like a floppy disk to save your profile. If you want your profile to or you want your computer to start at the profile that you saved it at, just click on the Windows icon. Another important concept to understand is setting a custom fan profile. Now, let's say you've done all the hard work, you've got this awesome overclock, but you notice your card is getting a little bit hotter, a little bit more hot than you're comfortable with. You want to set a custom fan profile. So my card, I noticed, was going from basically when it got hottest, it was going to be stable at around 67 degrees Celsius. Now that seems a little bit hot for me, and this card is pretty massive. It has a huge heatsink, but it has these two giant fans. So I wanted to know if I increased or I made changes to the fan curve, what impact would this have on temperature? So I noticed a reduction in about 10 degrees just by changing the fan curve, and it was really easy. So the first thing you want to do if you're trying to have a custom fan curve is just click on the gear button, which will allow you to get access to the fan settings. You're going to want to go from default to custom, and then you're going to basically be able to click and drag those dots in whichever way you desire. I personally wanted the fans not to spin at all when it goes from 0 to 30 degrees Celsius, because it's really not, there's no load on the GPU, so I didn't really think the fans need to be spinning. But as you can see, from 30 to 80 degrees Celsius, that's when I have a more aggressive fan curve. So basically this will just ramp up the fans. It should keep it cooler, and in my case it was definitely able to keep it cooler at 10 degrees Celsius. Just keep in mind, with the GPU Boost 4.0, just having a more aggressive fan curve and even just increasing the temperature and power limits, you just automatically, the card with GPU Boost 4.0 will boost probably to much higher levels than previously accounted for by your card. I know with this custom fan profile, as well as the core and memory overclock, I was able to see some significant results, and everything stayed cool, so that's the most important thing. Now these are my results over a 3-run average. I was seeing basically gains in every synthetic and game benchmark that I tried to run. Now the increases weren't as significant as I would have wanted them to be, but it was impressive nonetheless. So in 3D Mark Time Spy, I was seeing a 5.7% change. In 3D Mark Time Spy Extreme, I was seeing a 5.8% increase. In Port Royal, the ray tracing demo, we were getting about 23 FPS without the overclock, and we were seeing a 25 FPS with the overclock. With the DLSS test in 3D Mark at 1440p, we were seeing an increase at about 9.1% from 22.9 FPS to 25 FPS with RTX turned on. And then with DLSS and RTX turned on, we were seeing an increase of about 6.8% from 34.3 FPS to 36.6 FPS. Now, in the gaming benchmarks, I was seeing not that great of differences in terms of the overall averages, but if you look at the max average and the min results, the values are definitely higher with the overclocked the graphics card. And actually with my overclock, I was able to get 2055 megahertz on basically with the core, and additional 700 on the memory. So pretty insane to think that this card can do all this, and the standard is like around 600, and I think it was like 40 or 610 megahertz. So overall, definitely looking good. The overclock did make a difference. So one other thing that I wanted to measure was the overall total system power draw. I don't have any instruments currently to just measure the power draw of the graphics card, So this is kind of how I had to approach it. And the way, the methodology behind this is that I ran the test, did a benchmark synthetic or game about 3 times before I did any kind of measurements, and on the 4th time I just recorded the highest value that I witnessed, and these are my results. So again, just take it with a little bit of grain of salt, since I didn't do this test for each of these different scenarios like millions of times. But overall, I did see an increase in wattage, which is something that you would expect to see. However, it wasn't that significant, which was a little bit surprising to me. So in 3D Mark Time Spy, we went from 302 watts to 331. In 3D Mark Time Spy Extreme, we went from 290 to 304. In Port Royal, we went from 285 to 287. In the DLSS test, we went from 281 to 286. And in the games, we went from 325 to 333 in Assassin's Creed Origins. In Far Cry 5, we went from 343 to 330, or 334 to 343. And in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, we went from 319 to 334. So definitely increases in power draw, which were expected, but not as significant as I thought they were going to be. And that surprised me, but it also made me pleasantly happy, because again, that means that you really shouldn't have anything to fear, especially if you're on a lower end, or let's just say your PSU isn't as doesn't have a high wattage. You should be fine with overclocking your RTX 2060. There shouldn't be any issues with stability and not having enough power. So overall, I'm definitely pleased with the overclocking results for my RTX 2070. Definitely let me know what you guys thought of the video in the comments below, what your overclocking experiences were. Hit the like button if you found this video to be helpful. Please subscribe for more new and relevant content, and I will catch you guys in the next one.